What is going on, everyone, today? And we've got a really, really awesome guest that I'm super excited to have on, Mr. Steve Rader from NASA. And he's been there for over 30 years and currently is the program manager at the Tournament Lab and Center of Excellence for Collaborative Innovation. And we are really, really happy to have him on to talk about the future of work and human cloud stuff. So with that, Steve, hello, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to dig into this topic with you. I first got exposed to you through Open Assembly in one of their community meetings there. You had some really, really good comments, and your background is incredible. And it seems like have been really pushing the idea of the crowd, right, and like a planetary resource pool in the future of work for a long time. So look forward to digging in, but would love for you to just kind of kick it off and give us a quick intro to you. Kind of who is Steve?
Sure. Well, let's see. I started at NASA about 34 years ago and have worked there the entire time and have been, mission controller at one point and then software development and communications architectures development, data systems. And then about 10 years ago, my brother who worked for IBM said, "Hey, you got to read this book about crowdsourcing that Jeff Howe put out." And after reading that book, I realized everything had changed, and that not just that there was a new capability, but the world had changed, and we needed new tools that we didn't have. And so I said, "This is really important for NASA. We need this." And so as soon as I could, I got involved at NASA. I actually, after reading the book, I think I joined like five different crowds just to try to understand what is this? How does it work? Why do people do this? And then once NASA started doing work in that area, which was coincidentally right about the same time, I jumped on board and became the deputy for the our Center of Excellence for Collaborative Innovation, which really started in open innovation and still is pretty much the main emphasis of our Center of Excellence. And then about 2015, we started working with crowds that were doing both open innovation and open talent.
Mm-hmm.
Freelancers specifically, um, you could run contests really on a purchase card. It was really inexpensive and we could reach a ton of people. I think their crowd is something like 67 million now, which is, crazy. It's almost 1% of the world's population in one community. And you could run contests because it helps them build reputation. But for us, it was a great innovation kind of facilitation platform. But then we were kind of like, well, but that's not what they do on this site. They're freelancers, and so we started looking into some of the studies that were coming out. And I know Upwork came out with an Edelman intelligence study that they co-sponsored with Freelancers Union, and it was showing this crazy migration of people out of full-time jobs and into freelance work.
Mm-hmm.
And the trends were such that we realized that, oh, platforms plus crowds plus members of many thousands um, that are still really smart. But people kind of have this as if there's this first class, second class citizen model of the old world where, there were full-time workers that you could trust and were great and could be trained on all your stuff, and that freelancers were somehow, less than that. And what we were finding was exactly the opposite, that these people were amazing, had amazing capabilities, and the platforms were allowing people that didn't have access to that kind of markets before and didn't want to just, try to beat the
Mm-hmm.
bushes to find their own work, were suddenly getting global work. And so anyway, we saw these trends and thought, this is different. This is something we need to monitor, and we're already plugged into a bunch of online communities.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in 2020 we expanded our contract to include bringing in communities that were doing open talent. So that was a lot all at once. Uh, Hope I didn't take away from the overarching arc here, but it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, that's amazing, and like that to have the foresight, right, to see that it was coming, I think is incredible. And so you mentioned The idea of like open innovation, right, or open talent. I think that this is something that gets told a lot, but like in your words, like what is open
Yeah.
innovation? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, open innovation is just really the concept of going beyond your normal operating group, right? So if you have a group that's working on something, that's great. Sure, you got smart people on your team. That's fabulous. The idea of going open is opening that up, going maybe it's just going outside your group to the rest of the company to try to
Mm-hmm.
find ideas, technologies, concepts, or going all the way out to an open public crowd and asking questions. And we're not really geared for that. So it's but it is that idea that you got to go open. And for me, what really clicked is when I found the why. Why is this even important, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that really, and it bleeds into open talent too. And it's the pace of change, the pace and scope of change that we're going through right now is huge. I was at a presentation a few years ago that Christian Cudicini did, who was CEO of Hero X for a long time, and he made this statement, and I use this statement all the time now, that 90% of all scientists that have ever lived on planet Earth are alive today. And and that really just hit me in the face because not only are there 9 times as many scientists than have ever lived
Mm-hmm.
working, they're better educated. They have tools that are amazing. And we get this whole new set of tools that are multidiscipline, like 3D printing and automation and blockchain. And it just kind of goes on and on. And most of them are easy to learn and easy to go purchase. You can get a metal 3D printer for $10,000.
Right.
That's a mini factory that you can buy, right? And so you start seeing the engines going of people experimenting with these tools and their problems and their technologies and coming up with very domain specific solutions that in fact are useful across multiple domains, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I call it the technology tsunami. That is just, it's so massive. There's so many people working on so many diverse, maturing, complex technologies right now, and making good progress,
Mm-hmm.
that it's really hard to comprehend the scope and the acceleration. The acceleration is the other piece to that. It's just moving fast. And
Right.
so, what open innovation brings to that is if you're going to somehow innovate, you need to know what are the latest and greatest technologies that can be applied, what's the latest and greatest knowledge that can be put to work on this, and what are the novel ideas that you don't know about that are in other disciplines, other industries that can be brought to bear. And it turns out that open innovation provides this amazing dragnet across the entire world of research in all industries in this kind of statistical way. It's hard to imagine. People have a really hard time with large numbers. I always use stadiums as a way to kind of
Right.
explain what we're talking about. But these communities are anywhere from, 500,000 to, like I said, with Freelancer, 67 million. And when you're talking about that number of people, you're really talking about thousands of doctors and thousands of lawyers and usually hundreds of thousands of engineers, and each of them has their own kind of specialty. And when it comes to innovation, the novel idea comes from the unsuspecting person who has the right knowledge, the right experience, and has the right context for where they are to address that particular problem.
Mm-hmm.
And over and over, we see in crowdsourcing challenges, which is kind of that algorithm that matches the person that can get you that right solution to the problem. Those challenges work really well to find people that you would never have hired,
Mm-hmm.
right? But have just the right idea to help you move forward in this new product or new innovation in a way that you never could have gotten within your own team. So that's open innovation. That was a lot.
No.
Um, the open talent's just the flip of that, right? Which is using the same construct of online communities, uh, that are out there to match what I need done with someone who can do it really well, and quantifying that in just the need. Um, I talk about the pace of change a
Hmm.
lot. I think we're seeing companies and organizations literally break because of that speed of change. They can't, if you think about it, if you need new expertise and that expertise is constantly changing. So,
Hmm.
just over the last year, people need to understand generative AI. You need experts in your company that can do that. Well, that's not even a skill that was out there, right? But if you look at how often those things are coming, companies that try to hire their way out of that are facing a losing battle, right? Because
Right.
how many of them do you need? Who are you offloading or offboarding to bring them on? And it's already pretty brutal, right? They're laying off lots of people as automation takes over, and it becomes this really difficult situation to bring on all the skills they need by simply hiring and retaining them, right?
Hmm.
The change is too fast. In fact, there's kind of an axiom now that if you want the latest and greatest skills, you never go to your internal workforce because they become obsolete almost the day they become a full-time employee. And that in the external world, you can always find the latest and greatest skills. So
Hmm.
this is really difficult for a lot of folks to understand, but it's a significant change to where we were 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and because of that, it makes it really interesting to watch the open talent world because uh, the old world used to kind of hire good people that you could work with and do everything, but it was really pretty inefficient because you can't task every minute of their day and you don't
Hmm.
always have the right fit and you're always kind of pulling people together to get almost good in a really inefficient way. That there's stats that say that the workforce is like 37% efficient.
Oh, really?
um, like
It's
something
high.
3 every 8 hours. It's
Yeah.
really not great. And on top of that, you have a ton of overhead, right? 1.5 to 2.7, I think, is the average that people pay for not just benefits, but security and office space and air conditioning and HR.
Yeah.
And so a lot of companies are finding they can pay open talent two, three times the labor rate that they pay their full-time or full-time employee and still come out ahead,
Hmm.
which is kind of weird because of both the efficiency and the overheads. Anyway,
Yeah.
I've learned a lot of stuff out there, but
No.
it's just a fascinating area.
Yeah, it really really is, and that idea of being able to like get better ideas. There's a really good book too that I'd love to shout out as well, called Machine Platform Cloud. Um,
Love that.
that's really really good, and they bring up that notion of that you can 99.9% of the time get better ideas if you go external to the crowd, because just like you said, it's this dragnet and you can access so many more. But I'm curious to get your approach too, because it seems like you've seen the arc of adoption of this idea of open innovation within NASA. But a lot of companies are just now starting to like dip the toes in the water. So like what challenges did you see in like bringing this new really like technology or capability to NASA that you think other companies are going to run into?
So many. There's actually, it's funny. We call them the cultural antibodies are your biggest threat because innovation is this very personal thing, and the people in your organization feel ownership of that organization and want to be the innovators. And especially at NASA, you become a NASA engineer to come and innovate at NASA. And when we first started talking about this, we got really excited about the crowd and who these people were and how interesting they were. And there's actually a case study at Harvard Business School about NASA's rejection of open innovation because basically we went out with that message of saying, hey, let's let's go use the crowd and we're all excited about what we could do. And all of that was justified. We had tremendous results on our early pilots. But when
Mm-hmm.
we tried to sell it to the workforce, we finally realized what we were really saying is, hey, I know you came here to NASA to be the innovator. And when you got here, you actually figured out that 90 some odd percent of your job, maybe 98% of your job is meetings and paper and process and trying to get something done that is not that innovation side. And every once in a while, you get the opportunity to dream up something big and new and be that innovator.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to outsource that.
Yeah.
Like you're asking me to crowdsource, and sometimes that was never said, but that's the feeling they had, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we took a step back and we realized, look, we're sending the wrong message because these tools are super valuable, but we're equating innovation and problem solving with the whole enchilada. And what crowdsourcing is really good for, and open innovation is best for, is discovery. It's finding those technologies, finding the novel ideas, the novel approaches. But in reality, those are the starting point of innovation. And so, just like if you were to go, in the old model and say, okay, I'm going to go buy this radio and I'm going to put it together with these components and these power amps and I'm going to build a new comm system, you
Mm-hmm.
would always go and find the latest and greatest tech, right?
Yeah.
And what we're saying is, yes. And now, if you think you can Google the latest and greatest in technology and even understand the opportunities out there, or actually starting with really cool tech, then you don't understand how big this tsunami is. And so part of it was just saying, hey, look, yes, we want you to innovate, but innovate with a clear picture of what's out there and tap into some of these other brains out there that are dealing with the same stuff to get their ideas and then go and actually implement and at the end of the day, that's your innovation, that's your contribution. And whatever you can layer on top of that, that's bonus. That's awesome. And they do, right? They're amazing people. And then we started selling it differently. We would show projects, but instead of highlighting the person who solved the problem, we would highlight the person who actually had the problem and said,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, Tim or Sarah over here in this organization that tried this open innovation stuff out and they got these amazing answers for not a whole lot of money and they were able to jumpstart their innovation. And we didn't really need it, you don't need the black box to be opened up to sell the black box.
I
And
see.
so that created a demand to where now we are currently running this week 100 different projects for NASA. And we
Holy.
don't advertise anymore. We don't go out and do big lectures all the time because we are getting a constant demand. That took 10 years.
Right.
But
Right.
when you talk about a company trying to take this on, they've got to really make it easy. They've got to have the people that believe in it and understand it, because
Mm-hmm.
open innovation is something that if you don't understand, it's hard to use in some ways. You've got to create a pipeline for it. You've got to create just the right amount of top cover and also bottoms up support.
Right.
You've got to create the contracts. That's the biggest thing I could say is put some contracts in place with two or three vendors. We have a multi-vendor IDIQ. We have 32 different crowds on one contract. And every
Mm-hmm.
time we have something we want to do, we put the little task order out. It's a really small set of requirements. They bid on them. We award them. That all takes like 3 to 4 weeks, which is, I know sounds like a long time, but it's lightning fast in the government. Uh, and we can use any one of those crowds that can best fit the problem. And sometimes that's
Mm-hmm.
with freelancers, and sometimes that's with a challenge. Um, but when you put those contracts in place, you're basically kind of providing a low barrier of entry for people who want to use it. And that's what you got to do, right? Anything new, you've got to be there to hold their hand. You can't just say, hey, this way really works. Go figure it out how you're going to fit that into procurement, legal, all the processes that you've got. You've got to actually help people do that. And when you do, then it still takes a few projects for them to really get the feel. But once they see it, now
Mm-hmm.
they get it. And the thing with open innovation, particularly, is you don't use open innovation all the time in your job. You
Right.
use it at very specific points. So there's a timing to it. You've got to kind of get that rhythm going. But it's
Yeah.
it's been effective, and we've seen a lot of companies don't talk about their success with it, so people don't think it's happening in the regular uh, commercial world. But it is happening, and it's a lot of company's special sauce to how they're staying up with competitive times.
Yeah, I mean that's you hit on a point that I've never really thought of, and that is that really that human element of being within a company and thinking that you're giving away your job or your freedom or your creativity or your credibility in trying to leverage external resources when in reality, you're still the one that's managing it. You're the one that's like leading the horse to water. So that is not kind of giving it up. I've never ever thought about that, but that is so true. And I use open innovation all the time, and that's what a lot of we do. But it's never crossed my mind. But I can now totally see, and especially after some of the customers that we've talked with, and they pushed back. I'm like, now I see why.
Yeah.
Interesting.
People own, they really have a lot bigger ownership. We see this in the science community, which is kind of the last adopter front. They really don't like it. But this all really started in the science community with Alf Bingham at Incentive, right? Where he was at Eli Lilly and his success created in Incentive. But, took 20 problems to the chief engineer that were all these, pharmaceutical biotech type of problems and said, hey, let's put these on a website. They did, and the next day all 20 of those PIs show up and said, you got to take these down. We're the ones you hired to do this. We're the only ones that can do it. You're going to give away all our intellectual property. And they did, and he had to go back and kind of talk them back into it. But when they posted them, within months they had solved all but 20 of these problems that they had been languishing with for 5-10 years. So
Mm-hmm.
it really is, if you think about it, if you're the PI responsible for that problem, who's more successful? The one who kind of sits alone and tries to get it done, or one that actually brings in all the right resources wherever they might be best sourced, which we're finding is open innovation,
Mm-hmm.
and then making progress much quicker. I equate it almost to my experience when I was at Rice. My first semester at Rice, I was really intimidated, a lot of smart people. And I held up in my room and did all my homework for hours and hours a night. And I made horrible grades. And the next semester, I met some people and started doing study groups. And my grades got a lot better
Mm-hmm.
because we as humans actually need that diversity of thought. We need to tap into different ideas and get that for our creative juices to go. And it's funny because I've really gotten into innovation concepts and processes. And, one of the things that everyone does when they think they're innovating and solving problems is they'll get everyone around a whiteboard and start brainstorming. And that has been scientifically proven to be the absolute worst thing that you can do. That as soon as you put up one idea, you've now limited everyone's thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And there's very simple tweaks to be done with that, where you get everyone to go off and to work independently first. But how do we not know how to innovate better? How do we not tap into this concept of how more brains are better, and it's a matter of harnessing that diversity of thought that is really what helps us to tap into what the cognitive surplus of the world is.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting into to how can we use human brains better. So anyway.
Yeah, no, that's yeah. I've never thought about it like that, but it makes total sense. And so I know that we're getting edge of time here. I did have one last question that you had, one of your comments that you had made before that I thought was really interesting and would love to get perspective on how and why it's important for companies to look at open innovation and open talent now to address it. But in your keynote at StartCon in 2018, you had brought up that for years, this idea, and I'm gonna ad lib in that like AI plus like automations, like they've slowly been taking over for years now. But with that slow takeover, people have had time to adapt. They've had time to like upskill and keep up with the pace of change. But now that rate is coming so quickly that everyone all of a sudden feels really uncomfortable. And I think a ton of companies are experiencing that. So like with that challenge that's coming up, how and why should companies be taking open innovation so much more seriously now than before?
Well, I mean, you just have to look at the mechanisms for upskilling and change, right? Really hard in any organization to upskill your workforce. In any, taking accountants and saying you're no longer going to be needed, go over here and become data scientists. people don't work that way. They're not going to do that. The budget's not there. The average funding for training is like $1,000 per employee per year, and that's usually for security and compliance. And so structurally, organizations aren't set to be able to change like they're going to need to be able to change just because of how fast things are changing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so part of that's open innovation, part of that's open talent. And what we're seeing is the open ecosystem of talent and open innovation does move that fast. Folks that are out in the open talent world at freelancers, they're upskilling much faster, and people are able to actually kind of upskill as part of platforms. I think Gigster
Yeah.
probably has some of that. I know Paro.io. I know Top Coder does that kind of thing where the folks in their community are constantly learning something new, which is very different from the corporate world, right? And when it comes to the change of what we need when AI and automation is starting to take jobs, is it's actually creating jobs too, right? There's the World Economic Forum report says, yeah, 85 million jobs go away, but 97 million are created.
Right.
The problem isn't jobs. The problem is getting people trained in those skills that those new jobs require. And
Mm-hmm.
this is where the open talent world has a lot more agility to move people through kind of the process of what it takes to adapt to new skills and new jobs in a way that we haven't seen before.
Right.
So my hope is that um, people will be moving to where it makes the most sense that they can keep up with technology and keep up with where the jobs are. Companies have to kind of orient to figure out how do we use the resources that are best fit to do all this change work, and what is that right mix of kind of core employees and freelancers. What the interesting thing that I see is in the open talent world, companies think of them freelancers as this kind of use them once, almost like a Grubhub type
Mm-hmm.
of thing, where you never going to see that person again. But the organizations that are using freelancers the most effectively are making them part of the team, and they use them as they need them. But once they've found someone good, they go back to them, right?
Right.
But you have an endless bench. If they're not available, you can go to someone else, and you can build this kind of ecosystem of labor that is really kind of exciting because you're always getting folks that are already familiar with you, already have a relationship, but you don't own them,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
This is the biggest thing that companies have to get over is just because you don't own the labor doesn't mean you can't get amazing stuff. And in fact, it's going to work opposite. If you own the labor, it's kind of like, if you have a subscription that's auto updating, versus
Right.
one where you buy something and it's fixed, and then if you're going to upgrade, you got to sell it and get a new one. That is where we are with labor. And I fully think that in 15, 20 years, we're going to ask the question looking back, why did we think it was okay for 200 years
Mm-hmm.
for companies to effectively own people's time and own them and be able to tell them exactly what to do versus this other model where they're all still getting all the work done. You just don't dictate all of the parameters of their life like
Right.
a company
Yeah.
today, right? Where you've got to be here at these certain times. Now you can still have people show up when they need to show up, but it's much more specific.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've done in the past has been like, well, we don't know exactly where we need you, but be on standby for whatever comes, and we're going to try to fit you in that. And if you look at the struggle of HR to keep people in development and managers to keep people deployed right, and especially in the fractionalization and matrixing that's gone on in recent years,
Yeah.
it's it's crazy, right? Of how they're trying to match skills. So people are trying to do this within a company, and what we're saying is, hey, look, with just a little bit of change, it's a lot of change. Don't let me. It's a lot of change, but change that's got to happen. Your organization can start to actually have an agility
Mm-hmm.
where you can still build culture, you can still build relationships, but you have to give up some control to do that.
Right.
And it's going to be a wild ride, but I think ultimately it's the way to go because it's going to be good for people and good for companies. And the companies that figure out how to do it are going to blow past the ones that haven't. Just like in digital transformation, I think
Mhm.
there's a labor transformation happening.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's a thread that I think that we could pull on in a whole nother conversation. But the idea of, the the death of the modern company org, I find super fascinating. And it's also, I think you hit on it as well, as like that idea of companies owning people and owning their time is something that is rapidly changing. But also, like, I feel like when I look at the younger generations coming up, their expectations and what they want out of it are, I mean, light years different
Right.
from people that are in, the people that are in the working world right now. And I think that this is going to really snowball really, really quickly. And it's going to be fascinating to see. But, I know that we are at time now, and I would love to pick this up again at some point. But thank you so much for joining today. And if anyone wants to follow you, hear what you have to say, check you out, get in contact, where's the best place for them to do it?
Yeah, LinkedIn's usually where I chat with people and meet people and connect people. So all the other social medias tends to change too often. So I just tend to go to LinkedIn.
Stick there, I hear you, man. Well, good. Well, thank you so much again for the time today. It is deeply appreciated. This was an excellent conversation, and I look forward to our next time.
Yeah, thanks, Corey.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
See ya. All right. And with that, Mr. Steve Rader, that was incredible. Like, again, that idea of being able to use open talent to really accelerate and give agility, as he said, is something that's super, super important. But if you're interested to learn more or you want to figure out how to leverage it, please feel free to contact us because we do this every day and we love it a lot. And with that, Keith at the outro.